Cash-a-maniacs.
GeoGearHeads.
Yeah, this is Team Smile Makers, just saying how good your show is and informative. I've been listening for years now, and it never gets old. It just come up with a new topic every week. Thank you for all you do, and keep on cashing.
Well, thank you, Smile Makers. We're glad you're listening and getting so much from the GeoGearHeads.
Now, did you know that they were actually interviewed for episode 257 of the original Cash-a-Maniac series?
You know, Daryl, I did. But that's mostly because you wrote it down in our rundown here. I thought about going back and listening to that particular episode again, but it's Christmas time, and, well, time is a little short.
Yeah, I understand that problem, and I guess I do make it a little easy to cheat sometimes. Well, on to episode 51 of the GeoGearHeads with the Bad Cop and myself, Daryl W4. Tonight we've swapped out our topic once again, and we apologize for the late change. We'll be rescheduling Aztec to talk about Neon Geo, and instead of talking about that, we're going to talk about the future of location.
Is that the location of the Earth? Is it still going to be around in the next show?
Well, if people are listening to this, I would assume we're good.
Good point. Good point. As we mentioned last week, our next show, if there is one, we will talk more about Earth caching with Click Chick, and it'll be the last show of 2012. The first show of the second year will feature noted hider J.J. Barrett's too, as he talks about caches and how he makes them memorable. We'd love to have your questions or comments for either or both of these shows. Just call them into our voicemail line at 206-350-3647 or email geogearheads@cacheamaniacs.com. Of course, you don't need to limit the feedback to just those two shows. We love getting your comments, especially praise like Smile Makers calls.
We do indeed, and we have more feedback coming up. First, we wanted to make a couple corrections to last week's show on Dropbox. First one is we double-checked, and free accounts are good up to 32 gigabytes, and it's half a gig per referral. Nighthawk 700 also reminded us during the Hangout on Google Plus that CacheSense does support the Dropbox API, and that's one of the things we completely skipped over is the in-app support, and many apps either do support the Dropbox API or have some kind of direct bookmark support built in to go to the Dropbox website.
Yeah, and those are important things to talk about. Now, Ed to Ed from Hertfordshire, UK, wrote us via email. I noted that recent episodes of GeoGearHeads have been discussing ways to manage travel bug races. Well, are you aware of the German geocacher's website called tb-run.com? It's the name and it's the website address. You can easily register and run a private or public travel bug race with this website. I've used it for a race between myself and just one other caching friend, and it worked well. This could be just what you've been looking for. P.S. The same people operate tb-rescue.com, a website for cachers to request a rescue mission to particular caches to pick up and move on travel bugs that have languished too long without moving.
Yeah, now I did take a quick look at this. I haven't signed up for an account yet, but have emailed back and forth with the developer too, and this does look like it's a good answer for what we were looking for. So, we'll have to poke at it a little bit more. It does allow for some custom travel bug races, but it has, I think it's 5 preset versions. So it is a pretty cool looking site, and we'll have to look into that a little bit more, especially because we've been talking about doing a GeoGearHeads trackable race.
Yeah, that would be great to start that off in the new year. Maybe we can kick that off by February and have it end sometime in November so we can have time to get the results into the last shows.
Sounds like a good plan. We'll have to work on that a little bit more and hopefully have an announcement for you guys in a couple of weeks. But now I think it's time to move on to our topic at hand, which is future of location, which really was kind of kicked off from a post by former guest Rich Owings of GPS Tracklog, which he had titled GPS Predictions for 2013. So we'll kind of run through that point by point for those who haven't seen it. We'll give you that information and kind of make our own little comments as we go. So, Badcap, why don't you kick us off with the auto GPS predictions?
Certainly. So anything that comes from Rich on predictions, I take a lot more seriously than I do with other people. So his auto GPS predictions, the GPS is for the cars. Garmin will announce their new 2013 Nuvi line during the first half of January, so just a couple of weeks away, including models with an integrated traffic receiver. HD traffic will start showing up on the mid-range Nuvis. Now, this comes over HD radio. The service is said to be 4 to 10 times faster than other similar offerings, and updating details every 30 seconds. So that'll get you to the office a little quicker in the morning. Garmin will also discontinue the rest of the 1000 Nuvi line. So that's, the 1200, the 1400, 16. That's about half of their current lineup. That's a pretty big shakeup. TomTom and Garmin will both continue to limit the number of new introductions. Expect to see only 1 or 2 announcements per year. Even so, it wouldn't surprise me for one of those new Garmin announcements to feature a dozen new Nuvis. Magellan will introduce a unit with a driving recorder, and Garmin will introduce their first RV unit for the U.S.
Yeah, none of this stuff really surprised me too much in the predictions, but it is a little bit questionable, I guess, as to how many new units we'll see out of Garmin in particular, because they've had so many new units, and they seem to have realized that it is going to be a little bit tougher to sell in the world where we now have free apps on all smartphones which will do the navigation.
Exactly.
So I do expect to see that backing out more and more.
Well, and you get the RV units with the really big screens. I think those will still continue to sell.
Yeah. Well, and that's the whole thing, is that people still are going to want that. There's still some specialized usage, but I think what we're going to probably see is a lot of those cheaper ones. The same kind of thing that we've seen with compact point-and-shoot style cameras. We started to see those disappear in favor of the cooler, bigger cameras, because you have that smartphone or even that camera phone. Most of the feature phones have gotten pretty good now as well. So you have that basic functionality. So what happens is people will stop buying the less expensive ones and start getting the more full-featured, better ones. So I think we're probably going to see the parallels there.
Well, do you think the latest Apple Maps have kicked off a whole new round of wanting an updated Nuvi or TomTom in the car?
Well, what's interesting is Google Maps was released for iOS just within the last week, and the numbers are indicating 29% increase in iOS 6 upgrades after Google Maps was released. Wow. So the indication is that people have been waiting to upgrade in hopes of Google Maps coming. They didn't want to lose a Google Maps from iOS 5, so they've been waiting to upgrade to 6, and as soon as that came, that was their last roadblock that was released.
I can see that. And I do know that it's been the top highest rated downloaded app on all the iOS markets, so in all the countries.
All right, so let's move on to what probably most of our listeners are going to be most interested in, which is the handheld GPS predictions. And this one we'll probably stop point by point and talk through a little bit more. His first prediction is that Garmin will announce a refreshed Oregon line with GLONASS support before this summer. Now, I've been wanting that kind of stuff, some kind of update to the Oregon line, and that's been kind of languishing lately.
It has. The 450s, 550s are pretty much top of the line, and all they've done is add a camera. So It's time for something newer and fresher.
Yeah, the next point, though, that he adds, and I'm hoping this is going to be included in that new line of Orgons, is going to be Garmin will release a new handheld with Bluetooth capability. And we started seeing this in some of the sports GPSRs, and it's been in some of the Nuvies for about a year. But it's something that's sorely needed, and we've been screaming about for how many years now?
More than one? Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've gone back at least 3 years talking about how nice it would be to send from a phone or tether to the phone.
Exactly.
Now, what Garmin has been doing is it's more of a use the phone to send information to the GPS. So you could send a cache, you could send contacts, that kind of stuff.
But if we could have that in both directions, where we can use the GPS's better sensors and better location to feed that into the phone, so we can continue to use all the online capabilities of the phone, get latest logs and what have you, but have the better location of the GPS.
Yeah, well, and really, how many of us would love to have the ability to bring up something like cache sense? Find your cache that you want, pop that to the GPS, have it start navigating, and then sit there with the smartphone just reading the details, looking at the photos, all the while your Nuvi or your Oregon routing to the cache so that you don't have to swap in and out, shall we say.
Good point. Good point. I like that idea.
Let's see. So our next one is DeLorme will introduce no new standalone GPS units this year, effectively leaving the handheld GPS market. That I'm not terribly surprised, though I have to say I'm a little disappointed, actually.
Yeah, and again, this is only a prediction, but we haven't seen anything new from DeLorme for a while, and they have really been hitting hard their in-reach units. And that's really where I see the whole company is focused at the moment. Now, they may come back and say, you know what, we're going to get back into the GPSs. Here's a brand new unit.
Yeah, and I kind of I understand they're getting out of it, but I'd like to see something more from them. They've done some great stuff, and it just seems like they are an also ran. I totally understand why they wouldn't come up with a new unit. But I liked having that better competition to Garmin and to Magellan. And Magellan kind of went the lower route with things like the Explorers GC, which is a great unit. And for the price, that's a hard GPS to compete against. So I don't know that there's enough margin in it for DeLorme to stay competitive.
Yeah. Now, I did talk with a Magellan rep this summer, and he mentioned that they're looking into Bluetooth and Wi-Fi capability on their upcoming GPSs. So that'll be exciting to see if we can get something like that that's going to trigger that whole movement in the market.
And let's move on to the next one from Garmin, which was that they will finally release a dual handheld GPS/satellite tracking unit. So I'm not sure exactly where he's going with that, but I'm thinking he's probably talking about something like the InReach or the Spot.
Exactly. That's what I got out of that as well. But it'll be a handheld GPS unit as well. So it's not just a satellite tracking unit like the Spot, but you're going to have that GPS, the screen, the interface built into it as well.
Yeah. Now, the next one that he mentioned, and the last one under the mobile or under the handheld side, is LiDAR-based maps will become more common. Expect to see paper backcountry maps and third-party GPS maps in 2013, but no LiDAR-based maps from the likes of Garmin till 2014 at the earliest.
Well, LiDAR, if you don't know, is light detection and ranging. It's used to create high-resolution digital elevation models. I took a look at some of this, and it kind of looks like a infrared picture of the landscape as you get the different elevations in different colors.
Yeah, it is very cool. I'd love to have that kind of stuff on the GPS as well, but I'm not so sure if I'd actually really use it, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't use topo maps, to be honest with you, all that often out in the field. When I'm looking for a GPS, I can see, or when I'm looking for a geocache, I can see. Yeah, I've got to go up that hill. But that's the essence of my caching lately.
Yeah. Well, the satellite views have kind of replaced most of the maps for me because it gives you some landmarks that you can use.
True, true. And both Delorum and Garmin have their satellite views that you can download into the GPS.
Yeah. So, we can always hope, and you could always do like the lidar as a custom map if you have rights to do that on the Garmin units.
And he said there's going to be some third-party GPS maps, so that'll be interesting as well.
Yeah, definitely. So we'll keep our eyes open and have to see what people think of that when it actually ships.
Yeah. Moving on to mobile GPS predictions. Garmin will update their Basecamp mobile app to allow for the transfer of topo maps. So that'll be really nice. Again, if you're into topo maps.
Yeah, well, and I could see that being really useful, especially if they're doing something like the pay-as-you-go model, and could actually, go to Europe, for instance, and while you're on the plane or something, download the topo maps. But I still think that you're probably not going to want to do that so much.
Mm-hmm.
What really makes me think that this is a possibility is a number of people I'm running into now who actually don't have a computer at home anymore. They only have a tablet and or a smartphone.
Right. Well, in that vein, Garmin will release an Android version of their Basecamp mobile app. So that will take the place of the computer there. Right now, the Basecamp is only for the PC and the Mac. So getting it out for the Android will be nice.
Yeah, it's one of those things that at this point you have to have, the Android stuff, and that's over 50% of the market by far.
Exactly.
The problem has been with Android getting it to work on all of those devices because it's really frustrating because I have some stuff that will work on one tablet but not the other, and even more apps that just won't work on tablets at all. So it is kind of annoying dealing with that kind of stuff.
It is a little frustrating, but I think as these pieces of hardware develop and come along, we'll get into a point. I was going to say a nexus, but that may not be the right term I'm looking for in this. We'll get to a point where everything will start to work together a little more seamlessly.
Yeah, Nexus has kind of become that Google brand now. Which once again, I will say that I don't want anything on Android that isn't a Nexus anymore after the problems that I've had with that and hearing issues from other people on my non-Google products.
Well, I enjoy the Nexus 7, but some of the limitations on it bother me. Anyway, we'll move on. 911 texting will see a limited rollout in the U.S., and we'll start seeing news stories about backcountry rescue being summoned via text message. So I dug into this a little deeper, and I read a CNET article. This is the Federal Communication Commission wants to require all cell phone carriers and internet-based messaging providers to support text to 911 messages, while the 4 largest U.S. carriers have already signed on to the plan. The FCC proposed guidelines would require an over-the-top text messaging apps, those capable of sending text messages to phones, to be part of the initiative. So we're looking at like Apple's iMessage, BlackBerry BBM, Android's Mighty Text, and Samsung's Chat On, as well as so many others.
Yeah, that's going to be really nice because that is a very, very, very useful feature to have. And I know so many people who just absolutely hate picking up the phone and making calls. Even though they have that smartphone, they just don't want to talk with anyone.
I know several teenagers that I don't know if their phones actually make a phone call. All they ever do is text.
Yeah, well, and you think about it, it would be a very good tool to have in a lot of those noisy, chaotic situations. Because if there's too much background noise, they're probably not going to be able to hear you or understand you clearly anyway.
Exactly. But also, if they include like Apple's iMessage, then you're going to get 911 text from an iPod on a Wi-Fi network. That seems a little odd to me.
Yeah, we'll have to see how that ends up. And now let's wrap up the predictions with the last bit on GPS tracking, and that's he predicts Garmin will roll out new GPS tracking products, and lightweight cat-specific GPS trackers will hit the market. I don't think any one of those are too far out there, but I do think we're seeing fewer people actually using GPSs and more people actually looking at these tracking devices to figure out where their cat is and that kind of stuff.
I was going to say, do you really want to know where your cat is all day while you're out going to work? I don't think I want to know that. I just want to pretend that they stay here in the yard and nothing ever bad happens to them.
Oh dear. Yeah, there have been some very interesting videos. Most of them made in jest, but there's some where Fluffy's this nice little kitty at home, and then they follow it with one of these little collar cameras, and you see him knocking around thugs on the street to get fish or milk or whatever, knocking over the local convenience store. Pretty hard to tell.
I mean, it would be really cool. I'm thinking if your dog jumps the fence and runs out in the neighborhood, that you don't end up driving blocks and blocks anymore. You get onto your phone, you find out, Fido's 2 blocks over. I'm going to go get him now.
Yes,
that would be so much nicer than actually trying to find the animal.
That does exist. There are a number of collars out there. Some of them will even give you like weather alerts when it starts getting too cold or too warm, that kind of stuff. All right, let's take a quick pause, and DeBear has joined us, so let's see if his mic is actually working before we continue.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
We can. Excellent.
Excellent.
All right. Well, with that, why don't we kind of move into where we think the future of location gaming is going, and this is kind of spawned by Ingress, which is all the rage right now, in large because it has Google behind it. I think this is a first of the location-based gaming with anyone that big really pushing it. And I've been using it a little bit. We've invited DeBear to join us to talk about it a little bit too, because I know he's been using it. But Bad Cop, you really haven't been using this, have you?
I haven't. I don't have an Android-based phone. I do have a Nexus 7 tablet, but that's not quite the same.
Yeah, that's actually what I've been using most, is the Nexus 7 with the MiFi, and it does work pretty well. Typically, I seem to crash about once an hour, but that's gotten a little bit more stable. For anyone who's wondering, I am currently using 1.08.1, and as we're recording, it's the most current version. It's an interesting type of gameplay. I think the best description I've heard so far is capture the flag, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. At this point, we'll talk about it a little bit more later. At this point, I'm kind of done with it. The only reason I'll continue playing is because it's in beta, and I hope that they get some of the things that I don't like fixed, and it becomes an interesting game. But DeBear on Google Plus today had some interesting feedback, so that's why we've asked him on to talk with us about it today. So, DeBear, why don't you give us your impressions of Ingress?
Sure. My impression of Ingress is that it's a very good starting point for the future of online or location-based gaming. I don't think it's quite there yet to be super awesome. Kind of like you, I find the gameplay of Ingress itself a bit limiting. But the potential is huge for what could be out there. What I don't like about Ingress is that everybody has the same playing level. So if the person who has the most time to spend out in the field playing with portals wins. So if you're like myself, I have 2 kids in diapers, so I don't have the freedom at any point in time just to kind of go out and defend my portal or try to hack a portal. So the guy who does have that time wins. But what I think what could be awesome in the future is if they kind of make it less decouple from real time and make it add missions and stuff like that to it. So I, as a player, can at my own pace go through level ups and go through maybe some sort of mission-based thing that will allow me to enjoy it more without having to worry about the fact that the guy down the street who has all the time in the world always is better than me.
Yeah, and one of the problems that I've had, I've only been able to capture 2 portals. And each of those only lasted for about an hour because we have someone in the area who's much higher level than I am. I'm only a level 2. So, it's not terribly surprising. With the way that this works, you level up, and the better your level, the better the weapons, essentially, the tools that you get, including the tools to protect your portals. And each of these portals have been destroyed within an hour of my taking them over. So that's kind of frustrating and kind of pointless. I have no idea what level this other player is, but like 2 or 3 hits on my portal and they're gone. I can't do 2 or 3 hits and do any damage to most of the other portals I've been attacking. So it's really frustrating that this guy can walk in and just annihilate my portals without doing anything myself.
Yeah, one of the things that I think this shows is, I guess I said, the potential for gaming. One thing that would excite me if you could add something like the concept of where I go, but have the Ingress quality level of graphics and things built into it. That would be a really fantastic caching experience that would just set where I go way over the top of where it is now.
Well, Figures, who was also on a previous show talking about why cachers still need GSAC, had also responded. Backup, do you want to read his response?
Sure, he responded via Google+. I've been saying that someone needs to merge RPG with location for quite a while now. Locations are monsters that you fight and level up with the possibility of user-created quests, a bit like Where I Goes.
Which goes right back to a lot of what DeBear has been saying.
Exactly.
And this is, I think, kind of where I Go wanted to be, but the technology wasn't available at the time. So now that we have the technology, maybe we'll start seeing more of it. And I should have really also mentioned that Ingress is not the first of this type of location-based gameplay. It's the biggest. It's the first one to capture a lot of interest. And I think it's the first of its type that incorporates the multiple players and everything else. The one that I'm most familiar with and really didn't get much enjoyment out of either was Code Runners, which was an iPhone game way back on the 3GS. Was I playing with that one? So about 2-3 years ago. That would have been more about 3 years ago, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an interesting game, but not so much the gameplay that I liked. And there's like Zombie Run and that kind of stuff, which gets you more active. So I like that people are coming out with this kind of stuff, and Ingress is the first one that really seems to have captured much attention, and I really hoped that it was going to be more interesting. One of the reasons I think that it is so interesting to so many people, though, is because it is invite-only, and so many of the people who seem to be talking about it haven't played the game yet.
Yeah, the invite-only thing, I think, is really a big factor. I know when I first heard of it, I used my contacts within Google to get an invite as quickly as I possibly could. Then I shared it with some of my friends, I think including you, Daryl.
Yeah, that's how I got my invite, was through your referral. Thank you for that again.
You're welcome. But the fact that it is kind of exclusive like that this definitely adds to the intrigue, and it piqued my interest right away.
Yeah, and it's that scarcity that builds the interest in other people getting into it. So, a good move on Google's part, but it's a little frustrating because none of my friends in the area are playing. And it is one of those things where if you have other players that you're teaming up with, you can do things like improve your portals, and you can work together to attack a portal. So it is one of those kind of games that's going to be better if you have someone else that you're playing with.
So does this mean that those who got in early through the invites are going to have a much bigger leg up than those joining later? Are they going to be a higher level?
Questions.
Or
yeah, that's one of the
at the end of the
questions.
beta is the whole thing wiped out and we start over?
Well, I don't think they'd really want to do that, because one of the aspects of the gameplay is going to be that you have to have higher level users coexist with new entries, because someone, a year from now, or a year after they exit beta, is going to have to be able to compete with someone who's been playing for over a year. So I don't think they're going to do that. But I've been playing for really only about a week now. Seriously, I did the tutorial and stuff, but I didn't have any portals that I could easily get to, so I wasn't able to play until about a week ago. So, I'm only level 2. Essentially, I'm only 2 weeks in, and I'm having these problems with these higher level players, which I have no idea what their level is. But I'm having problems with those folks just not making it fun for me to be in the game, because I am essentially a new player, and they're just decimating anything I attempt.
Yeah, player level leveling out of that, like they're talking about, would be a long way towards making it more enjoyable.
Mm-hmm. So something like a newbie protection, that your portals will be safe until you reach a certain level.
Something like that, or just if you have a higher player in the area, that they play with the other higher players in the area.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like World of Warcraft kind of has this, where if you're a newbie player, you don't automatically just get killed by every single level 70 paladin that you see. There's some kind of built-in safeguards so that you have a chance to actually do something before you just get wiped out.
Right. Well, I'm going to have to try it. So somebody send me an invitation, and I'll jump into it. I'll pull the clear spot out, and we'll start doing some portal hacking
definitely
in the
worth
area.
Looking at it, just for the interest in what they've done with this massive online location-based game. Unfortunately, I don't have any invites, and haven't since I signed up.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's up with that. I mean, I know why they do it. It's because of capacity and all that type of stuff. But as soon as I get an invite, I'll give you the first one I get.
No, thank you.
But yeah, I have guys in my area that I'd like to get involved who are bugging me, and they can't get in. So this is the problem with the invite, and that's what's making it so much more talked about. But it's also part of what's making it a little frustrating for me, is because I can't get in with some of these other players, and I haven't found anyone in my area who's the same faction. And we should probably also mention, for people who aren't familiar with Ingress, because I'm assuming most of our listeners have heard the name, but that's about it. There are 2 factions for Ingress, which is essentially like your team. You have the Enlightened and the Resistance. So as one of those 2, you work with your team against that other team.
Okay.
Hence the capture the flag type aspect of that.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to see, though, Groundspeak start working on maybe a Where I Go version 2 that would be only for things like smartphones, maybe some of the newer, better GPSRs that have more processing power, because don't forget that Where I Go is over 5 years old now.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, is it that old? I think it's about that old.
It's about that old.
Where it was built for, like, the Colorado, which was not really powerful enough to handle even what they were doing with Where I Go back then. And I think, to be honest, they're going to have to do something a little bit better than the Lua scripting structure that they had done for Where I Go, because I think that might have been part of the problem, because it does require more processing power to actually execute that. Maybe they're going to have to actually do something where it is compiled.
Well, I think the big thing with the Where I Go stuff is making it user-friendly. You shouldn't need to be a programmer to do it. It should be to do a simple Where I Go. It should be a matter of just drag and dropping a few boxes, connecting them together, and typing in some properties. It shouldn't be. You should never have to bust out a text editor to set them up, which I think is where I've never actually tried it, but that's my understanding is there's kind of a barrier to entry that is higher for those. So if they had the right tools, and if you could slap an Ingress style, like the graphics level, you could really have an incredibly immersive geocaching experience that'd be very unique, and I think it'd be pretty awesome.
Yeah, I worry about the graphics and such if it's going to be user configurable like that, because once you start getting into the graphics like Ingress is doing, that unless you're going to use standard sets of graphics, then it's going to be a lot more complex to actually build a system. But having that standard set would actually make it easier for newer, unexperienced scripters to get into it. And my experience with Where I Go is that it is a little bit challenging, but it's very much like other scripting apps that I've used. So yes, it's not something that you're going to be able to just jump into and make work, but it's nowhere near as bad as learning to program in C or something.
Right. I started Where I Go, never actually finished it, but I didn't find it all that difficult to program. However, to get it to operate was a different story, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
I would
that's
program
the
it
same kind of stuff I ran into.
and set up a zone, and I found that zone to be very soft. Did I actually cross into that zone? And so a lot of that I was disappointed with.
Yeah, I had all kinds of problems with my cartridges that I attempted. I really liked it. I saw Where I Go as being the solution to the problem, which is what got me into caching, which was how do you do things like walking tours where it's going to automatically trigger.
Right.
And one of the projects that I had tried was creating for the the Pocket PC platform, a cartridge that was a tour of our local little historic village. Problem was there's too many zones in such a tight little space that nothing worked.
Right. Right. I did a Where I Go cartridge in the Alamo. And, it worked out pretty well. It was a nice little walking tour around the original confines of the Alamo. So that worked out well. Then again, that was about the only one that was successful. I think I've done two.
Yeah, I've done a few Where I Goes, and for the most part, I've enjoyed them. Some of them are pretty boring, but it's different, and because there were so few Where I Goes, even the ones that were kind of boring were still kind of interesting because it was different.
Exactly. Well, we need to wrap up the show. DeBear, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. It's good to be here.
And don't forget that next week we're going to be talking earth caching. So join us then, and send us all of your questions as well. Bad Cop, any interesting thoughts on what you might want to know for this next episode?
Well, boy, you put me on the spot here. We're talking with ClickChick about earth caching. So we talked last time about what to bring with you, and this time I'd like to learn about where are some of the best earth caches, places to go earth caching. Yeah, so if you've come across a really good one, let me know.
And hopefully we'll get to talk a little bit more about placement with her as well. But check the Cachemaniacs website at cachemaniacs.com for more on the GeoGearHeads, including show notes for this and all of our episodes. We love hearing from our listeners, so leave us feedback by calling 206-350-3647, by emailing geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com, or through social media. Your support helps keep the Cachemaniacs shows coming. Please consider making a PayPal donation through the link on our website to support the Cachemaniacs shows. GeoGearHeads is produced by Chris Offenauer and Daryl Wattenberg. This show is copyright 2012 by Daryl Wattenberg. All rights reserved.
Cash with the Cachemaniacs.